Welcoming to the show, my friend, Mr. Matt Pinfield, my good friend. I see you all the time. I love seeing you, by the way.
You know, it's amazing how we were introduced by a mutual friend of ours, and we became fast friends. I mean, I love hanging out with you, and you and I are such music heads, and we just hit it off. And you became one of my favorite people. We become so close. It's pretty mind-blowing, but I'm glad. You know how sometimes you just know when you meet somebody that, you know, they're like a brother, soulmate, whatever you want to call it, but I immediately...
I feel the same way, by the way, but after a certain age, sometimes you stop making friends, right? Like after like 50 plus, I'm like, all right, I have a lot of friends. But you came into my life, and it's like every day we're like chatting now, and it's the greatest. So
we're always talking about life, music, you know, everything, and it's... and I appreciate it. Yeah. It's great.
It's great. It's great to have another brother that we can get into. We're going to look back on the year in music. Interesting year, by the way, right?
It really was. Yeah. For me, I got to say, Scott, it was one of the best things about it was the surprises of established or legendary artists putting out great music, because that isn't always the case, right?
Yeah.
You know, like bands will be around for a long time, and of course, you love them, you respect them, you want to go see them live. They'll release a new record. I remember one of the funniest things I ever saw someone do, and it wasn't that their new record wasn't good, but I was laughing so hard because my friend Johnny Resnick from the Goo Goo Dolls went on stage. He was doing a new song, and he goes, "Now's a good time to go get a beer, go to the bathroom. Here's a song from our new album." And I thought it was so funny. It was self-deprecating, but it was also like par for the course in certain situations. And actually, the new song he had was good, but you know, it was really a funny thing. I thought that he made reference to that, because so many people do that. And this year, we've had artists that have been around for a long time that made really good music. It was vital and exciting. And for me, that's what was the best gifts of 2023.
Would you ever think we'd be sitting here talking about new music from the Beatles and the Stones? Because the Stones haven't put out a record in years.
Yes. And, you know, I love both of them. I mean, I was just so pleasantly surprised, because, you know, when the Beatles released, you know, Free as a Bird and Real Love, I wasn't that excited about those tracks. I'm a huge Beatles fan. I love them. They're so important in my life. You know, I got to interview Paul McCartney. I get to see Ringo pretty regularly, and we become friends. But I love this song now and then, and it feels so real and natural, even if it was just taken from those verses. But it just sounds, there's so much emotion in John Lennon's voice. And that's when AI has actually put to some good use, because they were able to extract that vocal. And I actually love the song.
It's incredible. That song was initially recorded, I think, in 1977. So to think that we got the song updated in 2023, it still sounds relevant.
It does. It really does. And it's just, you when you hear it, you just go, man, God, what... We wish John had lived and that tragedy didn't happen back in 1980, because, you know, I think he had a lot more, of course, he had a lot more that he could have done and songs he would have delivered. And I think he was always coming from a very honest place, whether people would agree with him or not. You know, he went through those periods where he released a lot of political records too, but he was always talking about his real life and his real feelings. And I think that this really has the essence of that in the song now and then. So, and it's been very divisive. Some people don't like, they're like, oh, that's not a Beatles song, but I love it.
Well, the video, I'm on the fence with the video, because it shows, you know, I think you know, Lennon and it shows Lennon and Harrison from the 70s, and then like Ringo in a tracksuit from 2023. And I'm a little bit on the fence, because it's almost, I dare I say, like creepy, because it feels a little bit weird.
I'm going to be honest with you, you know, like, you know, I've watched the video, but I've separated it. I've purposely kind of, you know, I'm one of those guys, even though, you know, I actually came to national prominence by showing videos, and videos were a big part of my life and career. I separate the two. And so for me, I listen to it as a song. I just listen to the lyrics, to the delivery that John has on the song. And really, I watched the video, you know, the one time, and I was like, that's cool that they did this to accompany the release of the single, but yeah, I have to keep it separate. I have to just kind of think of it that way.
From the man who broke so many bands through videos, right?
Yeah, and there have been some great videos over the years, and as we all know, some not so great ones, right? But some really actually groundbreaking ones.
Speaking of which, I know we're going to get into our top 5 lists, our top 10 lists. We can't not talk about the Stones record, and a little bit of controversy with Sydney Sweeney and the single, the kickoff single, "Angry." Great song. I love the song.
I love this song.
I like the video. Do you like the video? How do you feel about it?
I do. People were complaining about the video, but for me, living in Los Angeles, but also, there's that whole unbelievable history of the Sunset Strip and how bands were on billboards, the legendary Doors videos. I'm sorry, Doors billboard of their first album, or Love's Forever Changes, or as bands, it became a thing, on the Sunset Strip in Los Angeles. Bands started advertising their albums on billboards back in about 1967 when the Doors were doing it. And I think that part of it is very cool because I love the history and I love the fact that, it would show them in different times. Some people were very annoyed by it. Again, it's another thing. That record is also very, very polarizing and divisive in a sense, but I love the record. And I think "Angry" is a great song. And when I heard that opening riff, I was like, yes. And then, it's like Mick Jagger still sounds great. You know what I mean? And I just love it. It sounds like a classic Keith riff. And
sometimes there are bands, I have to admit, we can get into it. I don't know if you went to, did you go to Power?
Power Trip?
Well, Power Trip. Were you at Power Trip?
No, I was at all the Denny Wimmer Presents festivals because we were shooting Aftershock the very same weekend. And I saw Guns N' Roses played both. Tool played both. And, of course, I got to see Metallica twice at SoFi Stadium, which they were phenomenal. But, it was very interesting. And Power Trip, of course, it was a cool thing. I was not there, but I saw most of those bands separately over the years, the ones that actually played.
I think we're probably in agreement because we speak so much. My general feeling is when it's, time to hang it up, right?
Yeah.
I just saw Kiss not long ago, and I love Kiss, one of the greatest bands ever, and their stage show. They were my idols growing up. But at a certain point, you feel like the vocals are on tape, and maybe it's just time. And obviously, this was their last run. I think the MSG shows were their last shows. But the Stones are still doing it, and they're one of the few bands that are as good as ever. It's incredible. They're so vital, and very few bands at late 70s, 80s. Who else can do that? And they did. My hat's off to Andrew Watt. I think they made a great, great album. The first record since Charlie's death, of course. Yeah,
and I did an interview with the 4 other surviving Stones at the same time. This was like an incredible experience for me. And I look back on it. When things are happening, it's just a day. But I look back on the fact that when they did their last album of all original material, Bigger Bang, I got to sit with Mick, Keith, Charlie, and Ronnie.
Amazing.
For like an hour and a half, 2 hours. And what was so cool is it was being broadcast live. So while the songs were playing, it was just me talking to the guys. And I was like, let's talk about that B-side, Child of the Moon of Jumpin' Jack Flash. And you know what? The thing that was amazing about the Stones were they weren't cheated. They weren't like, oh, we don't remember whatever. They were like having fun. And it would start a conversation between Mick and Keith. And Charlie would, chime in. It was just this really incredible moment. Somehow this guy, Pete Meaden, came up that they knew. And I'm like, oh, yeah, the guy who wrote the High Number single, with The Who, like I'm the Face and Zoot Suit. So it was just, and they were having a great time. And so that's something I'll always cherish, the memory of being able to interview all the Stones at the same time.
Incredible.
Of course, Bill Wyman had already left the band. But,
that's on my bucket list.
Yeah, well, you had dinner with Mick Jagger
I did,
once.
but I never interviewed them. I think I'd be too nervous. Certain band. I met Paul McCartney, I want to say it was a year ago. I was so nervous. I just wanted to hug, just to say I had that 2-second interaction. Sometimes that's all you need. I don't think I would. You've probably interviewed McCartney.
I did. Well, I can tell you this. This is the funny thing. Even after I did tons of interviews over the years and, walked on stage at Madison Square Garden introducing bands or stadiums, Paul was the guy that I was the most afraid to meet. So in 99, he was throwing a party for Buddy Holly's birthday or some kind of anniversary because he owns a publishing on all the Buddy Holly songs. He was having a party at Roseland in New York City. I met Buddy Holly's widow there, Maria Elena. She was beautiful and so kind. And Dion was there, and the Smithereens played, and the original Crickets with their second singer, the guy Sonny Curtis, who wrote I Fought the Law, the Bobby Fuller 4 Clash classic. And it was a great night, but I was like, Bill Flanagan, who was the editor of Musician Magazine, has done a lot of things, written some incredible books. He's a dear friend of mine. He goes, have you gone up and met Paul yet? And I'm like, oh man, I don't know. And I was afraid to meet Paul because I saw him walk by another guy. But you got to think a guy as famous as Paul McCartney, one of the most famous people in the world. This guy was like a little uncomfortable, and he was like, I could tell the guy froze, and Paul just saw that and just kept going because he's got that radar, right? And so, but I was afraid, like, oh my God, it hadn't all sunk in, and I was like, what if he just doesn't want to talk to me? And Bill goes, no, he knows who you are. Go up and talk to him. So I walked up to McCartney. He's talking to someone else. He looks at me, he goes, hey, Matt, how you doing? And he knew who I was, which blew my mind. Immediately, I said, Paul, like, it was great you worked with Elvis Costello, because I love Elvis Costello, and Eric Stewart, who was in 10cc, and the Mindbenders, and we talked about that. And I actually had the balls to say something that I never thought I would say. And I said to Paul McCartney, I said, Paul, you know what, man? I always thought the critics were wrong and unfair the way that they would, take shots at Wings. And I said, anybody can write a song as metal as Helter Skelter and as beautiful as Here, There, and Everywhere. Fuck them. They got nothing on you. And he smiled. And he said, and then a couple minutes later, he goes, are you coming to the party next week? And I'm like, yes. And of course, I was moving to LA in 3 days, but I didn't want to kill the mood. So I just said I was coming to the party, which I wasn't. I was leaving and going out to Los Angeles to do Farm Club with Jimmy Iovine and those guys. But boy, it was an unbelievable moment for me. Because if Paul wasn't nice to me, I would have been devastated. He's a Beatle.
Our show today is brought to you by the fine folks at Sonos. I have to take a moment to talk to you about my favorite speakers on the planet. Sonos, first impressions, open up the box, some of the sleekest speakers I've ever seen in my life. Sonos has hands down been my favorite speaker brand for years, especially as a touring musician myself. I've used all types of speakers throughout my career, and I gotta tell you, Sonos beats them all for sound quality and ease of use. I recently got the Beam soundbar and the extra subwoofer. I plugged it in, it's super easy to use, and I gotta tell you, my room fills up with sound like no one's business. The Beam soundbar is the clearest dialogue and such insane bass, especially when hooked up to my extra subwoofer. My whole room shakes. It literally fills up my bedroom with so much sound. Lately, I've also been using the Arc soundbar for my living room TV. It's super easy to connect to. I was able to seamlessly hook it up. It's sleek and it blends right into my space. The Arc soundbar has really changed the way that I watch TV and movies. I'll have some friends over. I hook it up to the extra subwoofer, and it really helps to create that intense surround sound. The design is immaculate. It looks great below my TV in my living room. My favorite thing about Sonos speakers is how easy they are to use. You can set them up in under 20 minutes or so. The sound is incredible. They look incredible, and they are by far the best gift you can buy for anyone. Head over to Sonos.com to learn more and find gifts for every listener on your list.
I have a funny story. I don't know if I told you, but I was kind of mentioning about a year ago, I walked into Stella McCartney's party. She's having a party up here. I don't know if you went, but it was at the old A&M studios. So I walk in, and a bunch of people said to me, do you know that Ringo's here and Paul McCartney is here? I'm like, holy shit. Like, that's a bucket list for me. Of course, as you mentioned, I met Mick Jagger and people like that, but I've never met any of the Beatles. And that's, a dream come true. I certainly never interviewed them like you or had that interaction. So I said to myself, how do you approach Paul McCartney at a party? Like, you don't want to be that guy that gets near him and he gets weird and then he walks away. I've been around him probably 5 or 6 times at a place called Zero Bond in New York, and I see him and I always want to approach, but you can't approach him the wrong way. So I'm looking at him and he starts talking to Leonardo DiCaprio, who I know casually, not super well, but I used to work with one of his girlfriends for years. So we know each other. And I said to myself, this is probably my in. I'm not going to bother them, but I have to figure out a way to say hi without bothering him. Yeah. So, I see Leo talking to him. I kind of make eye contact. I get near them. And Leo, as you know, travels with like all his rat pack of friends, like Lucas Haas, and he's got all these friends that I know a bunch of them that he travels around with. And one by one, when Leo was done talking to Paul, they said goodbye, and all his friends stood in a line and when said goodbye to line up to say goodbye to Paul McCartney. And I just hopped in there. And Paul goes, "Are you with them?" And I go, "I am." A little white lie. And he goes, "All right, well, bring it in, mate." And then he gave me a hug. He goes, "You good?" I go, "I am good." He goes, "All right." And I said to myself, that's all I need.
That is the greatest.
I only needed like 30 seconds
to get a hug from Paul McCartney is just,
I called my mom and I was like, just so you know, I met, one of the greatest, maybe the greatest living legend in music. Anyway, it was a really interesting year. So I want to talk about your top 5 records, your top 10 albums of the year.
10, didn't I? Like, I'm sorry, I did that.
Actually picked 10 albums.
Yeah, and I picked 10.
Your top 5 songs, too.
Oh,
so
wow.
We'll
you know what I did? I hope you don't mind this, but I ended up picking 10 of each. You know what's really hard for me, and I've got to tell you this. I've got to preface this whole thing with, you know, my feelings about songs change every day because I wake up with a song in my head.
We're both picking up our lists here.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm gonna find it.
Right.
But Scott, like, what's crazy is it's so hard for me sometimes to pick just 10. Like when I wrote my book, the book that's called All These Things That I've Done after the Killer song that Brandon Flowers had obviously been inspired to write by us getting together, which was amazing for me, and another thing in history that I go, holy shit,
incredible story.
And I pinch myself and say, wow, what a blessing. But I in my book they were like, we want a list. This is Simon & Schuster and Scribner, the publishers, and my editor, and he said top 50 from each decade. I'm like, okay. And it's hard. 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, even 2000s. It was hard to pick 50. And I forgot things. And people would call me and go, dude, I can't believe you didn't have an album in there by this band. And I'm like, damn, you're right. So it was like one of those situations where, so I did 10.
But we had a lot of crossover.
Yeah.
So that was really interesting to me.
So yeah, I think we should talk about that because we did have a lot of crossover because you and I end up talking about music all the time anyway. So where do you want to start?
Well, let's talk about your top 10 albums of 2023. And again, it doesn't have to be in any particular order, although I did order mine. But I'd love to hear Matt Pinfield's top 10 albums of 2023. So starting with, you want to start with number 1?
Well, yeah, and it's like the same thing, no particular order, although this probably is my favorite album of the year, to be honest with you. And that's the Foo Fighters. But here we are. I am a huge Foo Fighters fan. I love that band. I think Wasting Light, Color in the Shape, obviously the first album, so many of those records I love. I love this record for so many reasons on so many different levels because obviously it was a cathartic experience for Dave losing Taylor Hawkins, his best friend, his bandmate, the brother he never had, and then losing his mom, Virginia, who he loved so dearly, And I remember I got to go to Dave's, mom's house to do the There Is Nothing Left to Lose album special. And it was me and Dave, in the basement with 2 microphones sitting like this on a couch with a couple beers, and his sister was there, and then I would run into his mom at many other events, and I loved his mom. She was a sweetheart.
And he's one of the nicest guys in music, having met him myself.
One of the greatest. Yeah. One of my highlights of 2023 was that on my birthday at Sonic Temple in the stadium in Columbus, Ohio, he surprised me, and he went out on stage, and he had me standing on the side of the stage with my girlfriend, Kara, and I was already up on this, platform, and they were like, Matt, you got to come downstairs. I'm like, no, I like where I'm standing. I'm like, no, you got to come down now. So I didn't know what that was about, but I was on the side of the stage, and Dave went out there and said, hey, you know his face, you've heard his name, and he's been our friend, and we love him for a long time. He goes, I want you to wish happy birthday to Matt Pinfield, which, my girlfriend was in tears. I was so moved by that. And then he said, man, he's been through some shit. But, he goes, but we're going to, and then he did My Hero for me. And then he ran over in the middle of the song, and he put his arms around me, covered in sweat, and said, I love you, brother. And then he went back and finished the song. Got the whole audience, 60,000 people. So that was one of my highlights of my year. Probably one of the greatest birthday presents in my lifetime. But, put all that aside, and I still I love this record because it's a really vital, emotional record. From the first single they dropped, Rescued, to the beautiful song that he sings with his daughter Violet, Show Me How, is such a gorgeous song. And, and I got to see them do it together at this little place on Sunset Boulevard called the Sunrose.
Great room. Yeah, the Struts played there. Luke played there.
Yeah, Luke played there with Mike Garson, Bowie's original keyboard player who I love. And so, but this record is deep. There's so many great songs on it. I love The Glass.
Glass is such a great track.
one. And
I actually agree with
Yeah.
you. I think it's probably the strongest record of the year. And also, it's a deeply personal record, but every song on the record is strong. And it's interesting because he drums on this record, which is
Yeah.
great. So again, I guess obviously without Taylor, I think he had to just return to form. But it's such a powerful record, so deeply personal, and I completely agree with you. That's my number one too. We'll get into that, but yeah, another record that we can't not talk about is the Rival Sons record. What a great album, Dark Fighter.
Yeah, I love this record so much. I think it's a band that are grossly underrated. They really capture the spirit of, a rock band, a band like Four on the Floor that that has, there's obviously it's a no frills rock and roll performance. Jay Buchanan's voice is absolutely incredible. I mean, all four band members are amazing. Scott Holiday, great guitarist. They're all four guys are great, but Jay Buchanan is like one of the most incredible, underappreciated, and he should be he really should be well known. I love his voice. He can fill a room with sound, and you're just like, whoa. I mean, he's an incredible singer. And there's songs on this record that I love. Like Nobody Wants to Die is such a great rockin' song. And there's this song called Bird in the Hand on that record.
Another great track.
That I absolutely love. So yeah, Dark Fighter I love. And they released 2 albums in 1 year.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They did a thing for KLOS, the radio station I'm on, for my show. And they did it for a small live audience at the Viper Room. And man, his voice filled that room. It was just him and Scott acoustically. And you're sitting there and you're going, holy shit, this guy's amazing. So, yeah, I've always been rooting for the Rival Sons, and I think they've delivered a great record here. And then they put out Lightbringer after that. It's interesting they recorded that much material, but, we keep hearing the stories from people that they've been stockpiling a lot of songs because of all the time that they had during the shutdown and the pandemic. Gave people a lot of time to be reflective and many to not hurry the recording process. So, I think that's one of the things that's really special about, the Rival Sons record. I love that too.
It's fascinating, Matt, because I feel like if Rival Sons and bands like Dirty Honey came out like 15 years ago, they would have been huge. They're still big,
Yeah.
but relatively speaking, I think they're still playing for rooms of, a couple thousand people. I mean, Dirty Honey's probably not playing for more than a couple thousand people unless they're playing festivals or opening for a major act. But just imagine that those two bands came out 15, 20 years ago, how huge they would be.
I agree. And Dirty Honey are also a band with really great swagger. Like Mark LaBelle is a great frontman. And I think the songwriting is great on this new record. There's some really great tunes. Their story is really interesting because they're the first rock band to have a #1 rock track in America on radio without a record deal.
They still don't have a record deal.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I don't know. They still don't.
I still don't think they have a major label deal.
Yeah, which is, because major labels, a lot of them had shied away from rock and roll because, they didn't see it as something that was massively profitable. But obviously it's the music that we love. And so, yeah, the Dirty Honey record, there's that ballad on there called Coming Home that's amazing. And, obviously they're having success now with Won't Take Me Alive. There's some really great songs. The title track, Can't Find the Brakes. And those guys have gotten out there and they slug it out on stage. It was a beautiful moment for me because I got to go and be the first person to walk on stage at the Forum in L.A. right after the pandemic. And it was Dirty Honey and the Black Crowes. 2 bands with great frontmen, with swagger, no frills rock and roll, and I walked out on that stage and people hadn't seen a live show in 500 days or something like that, I think, since the Forum been open. And it was a electrifying evening. And I watched this show. I went back and watched from my seat because I love to see, and hear the band the way they're supposed to sound. And both Dirty Honey and the Black Crowes were amazing that night, so.
You and I are both huge Black Crowes fans, and they actually just announced yesterday their new record's coming out this year, which I'm super excited about. So.
Yeah, they dropped a new single, and the album will be out soon, in a couple weeks. So I love those guys. I really do.
One of my faves.
And I think, that's the other thing. What's really happening with the Black Crowes now is, they've come, obviously, Rich and Chris are, they've buried the hatchet. It's tough with families, man. There's feuding brothers. We love Noel and Liam. We love Ray and Dave Davies. You know what I mean? Like these guys that have been in bands and they have their issues.
I had them on the show together. I was so nervous because I know I used to play music many years ago with Johnny Colt, who was the original bass player, Chuck Brandt. And but I never really got to know Chris or Rich well, so I was nervous they would be fighting on the podcast.
Yeah.
So I was, they were on. We did a Zoom, so it's different when you do it in person. But yeah, I was super like, is this going to go well? Are these guys going to break into like a brawl during the fight? They were in separate locations, so maybe that helped it. But I'm guessing they get along great now because they seem like everything's going great. And every time I see Chris, because I've seen him a bunch now, he's always in a great mood and seems to be really loving life. So I'm guessing, I'm really excited for their new record. Let's get into number 4. Matt Pinfield's top favorite albums of 2023.
Yeah,
I have Royal Blood, Back to the Water Below.
Yeah, Back to the Water Below. I hope I didn't change the list before I said it. But yeah, Back to the Water Below, I love. I'm a big fan of Royal Bloods, and this is a different record for them, but I love this record. When their first album came out at the end of 2014, for me, it was still like my favorite album of 2015 and 16. Royal Blood, to me, when that first record came out, it was 33 minutes long, 10 songs, no filler, just hit you over the head. I agreed with Jimmy Page and Lars Ulrich and everybody who said, like, this is the best record that's out there. And Jimmy Page was on the side of the stage. He flew in to see those guys play the Mercury Lounge, their first New York show.
I was there.
You were there?
Yes.
That's amazing.
And I actually couldn't believe there was no guitar player. I was like, how is this guy getting these sounds out of a bass?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of two-piece bands out there that we really love, whether was the original White Stripes or the Kills. I mean, there's just...
But bass and drums. There's not a lot of bass and drums.
That's it. I mean, the thing was what he was able to create and do with a bass, with all those pedals, those amps, and all the effects, what just absolutely blew me away, And I think... that's the thing that's really great about those guys. I love them, and they burst onto the scene. Guys like Howard Stern said, "This is my favorite new band." Had them playing "Figure It Out" on there. They played Lollapalooza that year. They played all the festivals in the UK, and I love that record. And I love the second record too. How Did We Get So Dark? First of all, it's a great band album name. And the third record, Typhoons, was a little more dancey. Yeah. I did love Trouble's Coming, Typhoons, and the song Boilermaker that Josh Homme produced. But I love this record for the fact that they've gone in like this almost Beatlesque John Lennon direction on some of these songs.
There's ballads on the record.
Yeah, it's amazing. And the single Pull Me Through is phenomenal. It's just a great song. And it still has, the attitude that they have, that it's always been underlying current in their music. But Royal Blood are, to me, still an incredibly exciting band. I love them, and I'm rooting for them always. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Number 5.
Which one do you have?
I have Duff McKagan, Lighthouse.
Yes, Duff McKagan, Lighthouse. I love. This is an album.
You kind of turned me on to this. I have to be honest, because I hadn't really listened to it. You put this on your list. I sat with it this whole week. It's a great record.
It really is, and people don't realize not only that Duff can sing, but he's a great songwriter. And the guy's good at everything, really. He's a great bass player. He's one of the coolest looking rock stars in the world.
Still.
I mean, he still looks amazing.
He does.
But Duff McKagan is unbelievably talented. And not only has his contributions from rock and punk and that influence been a big part of Guns N' Roses' sound over the years, and he's done, his bands like Loaded, and he has some of the original band members there. But what he's been doing recently as a solo artist is kind of leaning into the singer-songwriter thing more, but with a rock edge. And, there's really strong songs on this record. I love it. He did it. There's one duet on there.
Jerry Cantrell.
You with Jerry Cantrell. Yeah. And there is a track that, he had somehow got tied up somewhere else. He had lost, it was held up in the rights at some label that didn't release it. Then he took back that Slash played on. Iggy does a thing at the end of the record, which is really cool because he's the biggest Iggy fan ever, but and played on Iggy's album this year. But I will say, I think people don't know about Duff is that he can get really introspective with his songwriting. And there was a song on his last record that he got this, all of a sudden he saw this interview, or somebody saw an interview with Bob Dylan saying that he loved Duff's album, and then Duff was like, well, I'm going to reach out to him. Maybe he'll write a song with me. Why not? Why not take a shot at it? You know what I mean? So
isn't it amazing? Even at that stage, when you're in GNR, you have your idols.
Yes.
And he's reaching out to Bob Dylan like, this is my idol. I'll take a shot.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, he's everyone else's idol.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think it took a little while for Dylan to get back to him, but Dylan told him how much he loved the tracks, and I think that's what a validation. If Bob Dylan says that you're a great songwriter, and he ain't throwing compliments around that easy about Duff McKagan, I think that's a great thing.
So let's talk about, we were going to discuss some of the current trends in music. Obviously, there's this whole country rock thing happening. Artists like Hardy, Jason Isbell. Jason Isbell and the 400 unit actually make up, I think this is your number 7 record on your list of top 10. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Well, I love Jason Isbell. I loved him in Drive-By Truckers, but I think he's made some incredible records. He's one of the guys that it's been a bit of a hero of mine, especially because, he was indirectly really supportive of my getting sober and clean and me changing my life and lifestyle. But I was already a fan, and I didn't really know him, but he reached out through people and was being very supportive of me. And this album, Weather Vanes, the songwriting is always, for me, it's one of those things where it's one of those records that I really love to just sit with and listen to by myself. You know what I mean? That's my thing with Jason Isbell records. It's one of those ones you want to listen to in a car when you're listening to music, but it has so much heart in it. And
I was never a country guy, I'll be honest. But all these artists that are coming out, like Hardy, and we just spoke about Jason Isbell, but also there's who can forget like Jelly Roll, who had a huge year, right?
I got to say, the thing that really surprised me about Hardy was he released this album that literally was half rock and it was half country. And he's a huge success in the country world.
He was a rapper first.
He did a bunch of different things. But he wrote this song that I thought was really fun this year called Jack, which is about the confidence that Jack Daniels gives you. And you can say, oh, what is that? It's pedestrian. I love the song. I thought it was a lot of fun, because it had elements of rock. Jelly Roll's Need a Favor was like one of the biggest country songs of the year and one of the biggest rock songs of the year. It was like it went to number 1 in rock. Like his last record, he had a song called Dead Man Walking that went to number 1. It introduced him to rock audiences. And Jelly Roll's another guy who can straddle that country and rock line. Need a Favor's a great song. Remember you were talking to me, you're like, what is the song that it sounds like?
We were chatting at dinner because I finally figured it out. We were talking about
was it Boulevard of Broken Dreams?
Meets like Wonderwall. It's like,
meets Wonderwall.
They all have the same chord progression.
Last night I was there going to my girlfriend Carol, I'm like, man, what is that melody? And we're sitting there for a minute, and then we were like, I think it's got a little bit of Boulevard of Broken Dreams in it.
Every song has references, and a lot of the greatest songs feel like there's something you've already heard before.
Yeah.
But we actually did hear that song before.
But it's true. But I love Need a Favor. I think, again, it's delivered with a lot of passion. And, I'm rooting for Jelly Roll in a big way. He's one of those guys who also started out doing rap stuff and mixing rap and country and wrote a lot of songs about his struggles with, just life, addiction, things in general. And
he was in jail for years. And his story is actually incredibly fascinating. I just watched something about him where he went back to the jail, and a lot of the songs in his first record he wrote in jail. Incredible. He was dealing drugs. He came out as a rapper. So, those are inspirational stories. Your story is incredible. You got hit by a car and almost died. And I always talk about the fact that you have such an appreciation for life now, because after going through that, Matt, there's no way that you don't look at life through a different lens now.
Yeah, being hit by a car and flying through the air and having your head go through someone's windshield from the outside and then being thrown, and the photo that exists of me is very gruesome. People, people are like, I'm dying to see it. You know what I mean? I remember showing it to the killers, like, we want to see it. Or like, and then other people are like, no, man, it's because it's very, very gruesome. In fact, TMZ put the picture up there, but had to blur it out.
As one of your close friends, I can barely look at it. But I think, again, just knowing you so well, that's what makes people who they are. There's no way that you didn't appreciate life before knowing you well, but I'm sure your appreciation of life now is tenfold.
Oh, it is. There's like between nearly getting killed, being hit by that car, it was an absolute blessing that I survived that. Had I not seen the car out of the corner of my eye, I would have probably been crushed under the car. So somehow I can't believe it. So many things. It could have been so much worse. I do have a metal rod in my leg now, titanium, but I hike every weekend, like 3 hours up and down the mountains of Griffith Park. And I love that, so it's made me really appreciate being alive in a big way. And, so I can really relate to artists who have been through some things, and I can relate to artists that have maybe not been through such heavy things either. But I think it's great when people in their art and in their music will share their truth and their honest story. You know what I mean? And I think, and that's not to say I don't love songs that are completely, written from a perspective of something that's imagined. It just really depends on how great the song is, right?
Well, your number 8 record is a guy that's been through a lot, but one of the greatest live bands, no question right now, Queens of the Stone Age.
Yeah, I love that record because, you know what, in Times New Roman, for me, hearing Emotional Sickness and, Paper Machete, they always have those great clever titles and plays on words, Been a fan of Queens of the Stone Age since that very first record came out, and I heard Regular John, and there was a song in there called If Only that sounded to me like Cream or like a 60s band. There was something about it, that reminded me of like when 60s rock went psychedelic in FM. And Stone Gossard signed them to Loose Grooves. He was the guy who put their record out. They came out of that Caius stoner rock world out in the California desert, right? And by the way, I should always give Monster Magnet from Jersey credit too, because they were one of the earliest.
I feel like everyone's on like peyote at that studio. Everyone's out there doing some kind, right? Every band recording out there is on some kind of drug. I don't know what it is, but it's the desert and all. Yeah, a lot of the music that comes out of there, you're right. It's like this psychedelic rock, but there's no way they're not using hallucinogenics or something when people are recording out there. But really strong record. Again, did you see them live this year?
Yes, I did. I saw them at 2 festivals. I saw them at Sonic Temple. I think I saw them again at Aftershock or Louder Than Life. It was I saw them twice, and they were amazing. And I love that I saw that Josh said, I don't understand why bands don't want to do their hits. They should do their hits. And I think, he's thinking of the audience. He's been through some crazy stuff. Everybody goes through crazy stuff. But I think he's come to a good place. He seems to be at peace with himself. And he still rocks. And, he's a presence. And there's some great songs on this record. So I was glad to see them coming out swinging again.
No question. Number 9, actually an artist that you turned me on to, Tiger Cub.
Yeah, I love these guys. They're from Brighton. Speaking of the duo that's Royal Blood, there's a scene coming out now of that area of Brighton. And Brighton was made famous by, of course, the Who's Quadrophenia, because that's where the brawl with the Mods and the Rockers took place. And also Queen had a song called Brighton Rock on Sheer Heart Attack, which is like just the greatest song. And when I was a kid, I didn't know what any of that meant. But the first time I went to Brighton, England, right? I was there with a band called The Wonder Stuff, who were my dear friends, who were a great band from England, and Papa Eat Itself, who were, a great band. That Trent Reznor signed their last album, and now the guy from that band, Clint Mansell, went on to score Requiem for a Dream and Pie and The Wrestler and Black Swan. But I was with those guys in England in 1989, and I went to Brighton for the first time. I've got to just explain this. And I went, oh, now I understand. So Brighton Rock by Queen, that is rock candy. So it's like something they sell on the pier, you know what I mean? Like the Santa Monica Pier or a pier, like anywhere where you are in a beach town. That's what Brighton Rock is. That's what Queen were referencing. And then when you walked out on that pier, it said, "Welcome to the Pleasure Dome." And that's Frankie Goes to Hollywood, the name of their album. And so there was a lot of references in rock and roll and popular music to
Royal Blood was on the show, and they were explaining to me what growing up there was about and how it was just the seaside kind of sleepy little town, right? But there's so much music coming out of there.
Yeah, because there's probably not a lot else to do.
Right, yeah.
And it's not that nice over on the English beachfronts very, very long during the year. But Tiger Cub are a great band, man. These guys are, they're a 3-piece. The lead singer is 7 foot tall. They're amazing. The Perfume of Decay is a great record. And speaking of going from Queens of the Stone Age to Tiger Cub, also signed by Stone Gossard and the guys at Loose Groove Records. And I had friends who were turning me on to them for a while and go, man, you got to check out this band. And they put out, this is a really great record. You know, I really love it. And I think, you know, for people that are saying, hey, I got to find something new in rock to check out and listen to, Tiger Cub is a band. And they're great live.
And your number 10 record, a huge year for Mammoth WVH,
Yes.
Wolfie Van Halen.
Yeah.
Big year for Wolfie.
Yes. Yeah, Wolfgang Van Halen. Listen, you know, my thing is, man, I got to say that when he put out his first record, I didn't know what to expect, man. And then I heard songs like Epiphany on there, and I was like, this is a great song. And he was not in any way literally like, you know, like obviously he had so much love and respect for his dad, and he went out on the road with Van Halen. But his favorite artists outside of there are everything from Meshuggah to he loves the Foo Fighters and Nine Inch Nails. So,
but also he didn't want to rest on his dad's laurels.
Not
he
at
really
all.
wanted to make a name for himself his own way.
besides that song on his first album, Distance, that was a tribute to his dad. It's a beautiful song that he did live acoustically on this last tour, and you know, just blew everybody away. That record, one of my favorite songs that year when it came out, was called Epiphany, and it has no relation to any Van Halen music. You would never even think, you know, you would not go, well, you can hear the Van Halen derivative in there. Not at all. And this new record, too, there's a song on this record that I love called I'm All Right, which is basically his response to all the trolls and all the people that are trying to tell him how he should live his life or that he shouldn't be a musician because his dad is who he is or whatever those things are. And I've gone on the internet and defended him and told people in a nice way to fuck off. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because I love Wolfgang. And he's such a great guy. But this is a really strong record. It's his second record. Again, he recorded all the instruments himself.
He's a great drummer.
He's a great drummer. No, but he can also play bass. He can play keyboards. I introduced him at his homecoming show off the first tour at the Whiskey A Go-Go. And I watched him perform that night and play every single instrument. And I'm like, this guy's unbelievable. Obviously, you know what you said. His dad's one of the greatest guitarists of all time. His brother, Alex, is an incredible drummer. So in that lineage...
I mean, if you're not good and those are your relatives, then something's wrong.
Well, it happens sometimes, right? I mean, it does. Not everybody always gets that, you know, the musical talent.
But Eddie and Alex, I mean, you hope that you're good, right?
Yeah, exactly. But, you know, again, he doesn't rest on that at all. And... you know, and I'm just really happy for him. And he's been getting a lot of love. He's gone out on the road with everybody from, you know, Alter Bridge to Metallica and Guns N' Roses. Foo Fighters are taking him out again this year. So, I'm always rooting for Wolfgang and his band. So, and speaking of Metallica, that was also one of my favorite albums of the year. I love 72 Seasons.
It's a heavy record.
It is.
It took me a minute to get into.
Yeah.
But it reminds me a little bit of the Black record.
Yeah, it does. It has moments like that. It's kind of like, you know, there are songs on there. There are certain songs that I absolutely love, like Lux Eterna, which was the first single. It's very brutal. It's a brutal record. You know what I mean? And I think that's where they wanted to go and where they were coming from. The beauty was me sitting there interviewing Lars for KLOS backstage, and also, you know, we also did it for the Power Hour. And you know, he and I used to run around and party together in the day. You know, like, I mean, I'm talking about like, and you know, I used to do a lot of stuff with Metallica in the 90s, but it was wild that he was literally sitting there at SoFi Stadium and he and James formed a band like 20 miles from there, you know? Incredible. And do you know, like, the town I grew up in, East Brunswick, New Jersey, is where Megaforce was, the Route 18 flea market, and those guys.
Johnny Z, I believe.
Yeah. So they were like, they were connected even from a distance. I probably ran into them at bars. We didn't know each other when they were like, you know, we were all like 20. You know what I mean? Yeah. 18, 19. It's pretty funny.
It was a great record. Well, let's talk about your top 5 favorite tracks of 2023.
Right. Yeah, let's go do that.
There's a little bit of crossover because some of these tracks we've already gotten into, but let's get into number 1 for you. Your top track of 2023.
Yeah, you know, I say I love this track. The reason I'm such a big fan of, I mean, and there were more than 5 again, but I will say I love this guy, Tim Montana. And this is, again, where country crosses over into rock. And this is really his first official release as a single, as a rock single. But he's got the most interesting story. Now, I heard the song, and I loved it. I'm like...
The Devil You Know.
Yeah, The Devil You Know is the name of the song. And I went, wow, this is great. It's got country elements, but it's also kind of like got grunge in it. It's got all these things. that I really enjoyed, and I thought it was such a well-performed, well-written song, and I fell in love with it. And then I got to meet him and got to know him, and the story's unbelievable behind Tim Montana because, he learned how to play guitar at like 8, 9 years old to candlelight. Like, they didn't have electricity. He lived out in Montana with his family, and he told me this great story that his mom didn't, because they were very, very, very religious, and his mom gave him, she had to use, used like a Goodwill kind of shop, where, it was secondhand things, and she gave him the Tool Undertow CD, not knowing what was on that record, not knowing there was a song called Prison Sex or anything like that. A Tool, and so he got Tool.
Here's a starter album, kid.
Yeah, that was a starter album, kid, right? Can you imagine? And then he found, hidden under her bed, the single of Welcome to the Jungle and Mr. Brownstone. And he's like, so, that was the thing. He loved rock and roll, but he also loved country, and he had a really interesting story where, he eventually earned enough money to come to school out here in L.A. for a little while. Then he moved to Nashville, and he started writing all these songs for different people. He loved Billy Gibbons, and he liked a lot, obviously like a lot of rock legends. And so he met Billy Gibbons at a studio, and he said, hey, Billy, man, I love your stuff. I want to give you my demo. And he was thinking, yeah, I'm never going to hear from him again, but at least I got to meet Billy Gibbons, big ZZ Top fan. Gets a call from Billy like 2 weeks later and goes, hey, I've been asked to write a song for the Boston Red Sox. They're all going to grow their beards because they hadn't won a World Series in how many years. And it's like 2013, 14. And let's write a song together called This Beard's Come to Party. Because Tim Montana's a beard too. So he wrote this song. He said the next thing he knows, he's listening to it at the World Series. It's playing there. And two other really incredible chance encounters for Tim Montana. One was David Letterman, who has a ranch out in Montana, and he, heard Tim and loved his music. He was playing at a bar one night, so he invited him on before Letterman retired. He was playing there. And eventually he left Nashville, and he wrote songs for a lot of people, but he, went back to Montana. Therefore, Tim Montana, and he bought a bar out there called the Wise River Club. Him and Billy Gibbons started a bar venue together. And he's told me that Billy's like the father he never had, and he said, and Billy says I'm like the son he never had. So it's wild to watch these two together.
Your #1 record of the year.
Yeah, well, I love the single, all right, and but it's so hard to pick. There's a lot of great ones on this list, but that's one of them. It was my biggest surprise this year to fall in love with. But I got to tell you about how he met Dave Grohl, too. The crazy thing is he's playing at Memphis in May, that big barbecue thing. And obviously Dave Grohl
barbecues all the time. He's got a barbecue truck or something.
Yeah, so he was there, and he said, and Nirvana, he said Mom used to sew Nirvana patches on his jacket when he was a kid. And he said, I looked and I saw Dave. I thought it was Dave Grohl because I saw him with Chucks smoking a cigarette and a baseball cap. And he said he literally went over to him, and then Dave said, man, I like you. You're a real rebel. And he goes, let's take a walk around the river, and I want to know more about you. And the next thing you know, he's friends with Dave Grohl. Dave's flying him on the Foo's jet. You know what I mean? He's hanging out with Dave's family. So he's got this incredible history, and he's actually acting. He's in a new movie coming out with God, my brain is frozen.
That's why you need this, Matt, by the way.
Yeah.
This is Magic Mind. This is a productivity shot. I
Yeah.
think you and I both need these.
Yeah, maybe I
we're
do.
We're forgetting shit after
because
50.
I can't believe I forgot.
That's you and me.
He just shot a movie, but
it's do more and stress less. So
Yeah.
I drink this, and then sometimes I feel like my memory comes back to me.
Yeah, I
Because
mean-
after 50, you need to do this kind of thing.
That is so true.
So yeah,
And
maybe if we take this, we'll remember everything.
yes, absolutely.
I forget what happened yesterday, so sometimes I need this.
Yeah, I'm
going
going
to
to do it right now.
I'm all about this.
This is cool. I love when you have Magic Mind. I love greens, and things that are green.
It's all natural.
I love ginger. I love garlic. If it's
great.
strong, I want to kick my ass.
This is the
great.
best productivity shot around. So after this, we should remember everything. If we forget anything after this,
Yeah.
that's on us.
That is on us 100%. And, anyway, so that's a Tim Montana story. I've got high hopes for him he's going to be going out on tour. And, I want to say this. I make no apologies to anything for what I love. I love music. I love rock. There's some R&B. I like everything from 50s rock and roll to 60s pop to jazz to blues. I just, and alternative, new wave, whatever. I just love music that's good. And that's really I always said, there's two kinds of music: music that moves you, and music that doesn't. And for me, I like a lot of different things. But
well, let's talk about another great live show and one of the best bands around, still making great music. Your second favorite song of the year, Depeche Mode, Ghost Again.
Well, Ghost Again, I love. And, I love that they got together. It's really amazing that Martin Gore got together with one of my other favorite songwriters of the late 70s. Well, I should say the 80s, because really, they broke through, I think, in 1980. But I was a huge Psychedelic Furs fan and still am. I've gone to see them. I still go to see them when they play live. I think Richard Butler is a great front man and has a unique voice, and which is why the first time they played in New York City, both David Byrne of Talking Heads and David Bowie were in the audience really wanting to produce. Steve Lillywhite ended up producing. But so, what surprised a lot of people was Martin Gore ended up writing this song with Richard Butler. So they, which is pretty interesting. Depeche Mode meets the Furs. So
great
I was
track.
very happy that these guys put out. I think, for me, Depeche Mode have always had a handful of good songs on every record. And there's some records that I absolutely are like some of my favorites of all time, Black Celebration, Music for the Masses, Violator. There's so many great ones. Even Songs of Faith and Devotion, which is when I had Martin Gore and Dave Gahan on 120 Minutes with me. So, I think that it's so good that they're continuing on after Fletch passed away, and Dave Gahan still has an incredible voice. You went to the shows, right?
I didn't go to the shows, actually. It's one of the shows I missed that I'm really sorry that I missed because I heard they were incredible.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your number 3. Aaron Jones, Blood in the Water.
Yeah, Aaron, he's an
Aaron Jones.
Yeah, it's and people, listen, we did a whole skit with him for our TV show, The Power Hour, like at Aftershock, where I'm calling him Naron Jones, Nylon Jones, he was funny. He's got
The correct pronunciation is Aaron Jones.
Aaron Jones, okay. Yes. He's this great black guitarist who did blues, did rock, was discovered by Sir Mix-a-Lot, the rapper.
Amazing.
I love Sir Mix-a-Lot. But he was discovered by him and he wanted to produce his early stuff, but he was from Seattle. He is from Seattle. Let me restate that. So Aaron Jones is from Seattle. Believe it or not, the first guy that got behind producing a record for him was Sir Mix-a-Lot, right? And I'm a big fan of Sir Mix-a-Lot stuff. I one time went up to Sir Mix-a-Lot and one time's got no cases. It's a rap song he had, and I actually rapped it to him in a liquor store once. Back in the beginning of the '90s, it was pretty funny. But I got to say that Aaron is an incredible guitarist, a really inspired, positive guy. He got a leg up early on from all these great Seattle artists. In fact, he was on a single. He was asked to guest on a single that was Duff McKagan, Barry Martin from Screaming Trees, and Mike McCready from Pearl Jam did a single with him, and they called themselves the Levee Walkers. Amazing. And he was their guest vocalist, did 2 songs, and then he got to do everything, play with the Stones, B.B. King, you name it. But I love this song, Blood in the Water, that he put out this year, I think, and he's a very interesting upbringing. He writes about it in his songs. So I'm a big fan of Aaron's. And
he was very happy, actually, that we put this on the list because he regrammed it on Instagram the other day, and he was like, I'm honored, Matt Pinfield. So
yeah, I do love Aaron, and he's great live. And, he did a thing for us at KLOS here in Los Angeles, an acoustic thing. And he did like the most, I've heard a lot of people cover Black Hole Sun. Not an easy song to cover. Because Chris Cornell is one of my favorite singers of all time.
I would never cover that song. He's one of the greatest singers ever.
And Soundgarden are one of my favorite bands of all time. I did a lot of stuff with them over the years and knew Chris well. And he did such an amazing version of Black Hole Sun for us acoustic. I was really knocked out by it. It was very emotional. And coming from Seattle, it made a lot of sense to me. But, again, it's hard. If you're going to attempt to do songs like that, you know what I mean? It's like, it's like when Hart did Stairway to Heaven in front of the Zeppelin guys and they loved it. It made Robert Plant cry. You know what I mean?
That's a rarity, though, because it's really hard to cover Zeppelin and do it as good, but they did a great job. Let's talk about number 4. We actually talked about this before, but your number 4 pick.
Well, we talked about Angry already, which is great. So, and we talked about Jelly Roll. So if you want to move, those are definitely there.
So
right?
number 4 for you is Angry by the Stones.
Yeah,
and
right.
Number 5, Jelly Roll?
Yeah, Jelly Roll, right, which I said because I love that Need a Favor song. It just gets stuck in your head.
It's a great
I
song.
loved Angry. I want to say Andrew Watt, I think, did a great job working with the Stones there, and also Don Was. And I want to say that I'm looking forward to the Pearl Jam album that Andrew Watt is doing because Mike McCready has said it's the heaviest stuff they've done in a long time, and that he really pushed them to, just really work on the songwriting, which I think is a great thing. I think they're great songwriters anyway, but I'm excited to see what comes of the new Pearl Jam album because I love the last Eddie Vedder album. I thought that record was great. And Andrew produced that and played on that. So
yeah, I posted this list, and Andrew sent me a message. He's like, "I have 2 of the 4 songs on your top 5." I was like, "Of course you do." We kind of
you guys grew up together.
Yeah,
you know each
it's,
other.
You know, it's crazy for me to see his success. So the issue is here. We can talk for like 7 hours.
Yeah.
So
I don't know what were the other songs?
Well, I would say there's one thing I want to get into just quickly. You know, your favorite live show of the year for 2023. Is there one that you had?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it has to go back to that Foo Fighters show. I mean, how could it not? Besides the fact that, obviously I was really touched by him dedicating, My Hero to me and it being, on my birthday. But more importantly, it was their return to live performing.
Sure.
And it was Josh Freese being introduced at that point at that festival, Sonic Temple. For me, it was a beautiful night because it was such an emotional show and so much riding on a band who'd been through so much tragedy. So it was something incredibly triumphant and beautiful about that Foo Fighters show. And that's why it was my favorite show of the year. And look, yes, it does. It mean a lot. It meant the world, the birthday dedication, but it meant so much to me in so many levels. So that will absolutely stay with me. I mean, for a long time. I
would say it's interesting because there were so many great shows I went to this year, but a band that completely blew me away. I'm still thinking about it to this day. I went to go check out The Hives. Their new record this year, Bogus Operandi, was one of the better records this year. But I don't know if you've seen them live lately. It is one of the greatest concerts you could ever go to. I mean, if you like rock music and you go see The Hives and you don't enjoy yourself, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Pell's, he's unbelievable, right?
He was on the show, and then I was like, yeah, I'll see it tonight. And I didn't expect, maybe I saw them back in the day. I don't remember, but honestly, I'm still talking about it. I'm still pinching myself and how great that night was. It was at Brooklyn Steel, and I got to say, for everyone out there, do yourselves a favor. If you haven't gone to see The Hives, please go, because now they're talking about franchising. They're talking about hiring other bands in other cities to play themselves and be like cover bands, right?
Yeah.
So, like, if you haven't seen them, again, just do yourself a favor. I guess a couple honorable mentions, because again, you and I can talk for like 7 hours, but a few other bands I wanted to touch base on that I thought some great songs, like Pretty Vicious, Struts, another great track.
That song is great. You know what I love about that new Struts song, Pretty Vicious, title track of that new record, is just there's something like it's going, and I love them, and they're one of the best live bands. And Luke Spiller is he's a superstar. He's got so much swagger and so much. There's just so much going on with him. Sexuality. I mean, he channels everything from Bowie to Freddie Mercury, early Freddie Mercury. I love this song, Pretty Vicious. It came as a real surprise to me. Didn't you agree with that? Like, I was like, wow, this album, they're pushing in some new directions.
A bit darker, even a bit kind of goth, a bit. I mean, it kind of
this song really is.
It's like a Depeche Mode vibe or something.
Yeah, Depeche meets the Cars, like early. When I said Cars, I mean just production-wise, musically, it cut like something on Candy or the first album, but in a darker way, like something, anywhere from Peter Murphy to I don't know what, you know what I mean? But I do love that song, Pretty Vicious. I like and I know you like the Maneskin single too. I mean, Honey, Are You Comin's great song.
It's great. It reminds me of The Cult, which we can talk about for hours. Ian and the boys, I mean, what a great band. Actually, Ian was just on Stern the other day. They still sound incredible. I sent him a message last night. I said, you sound incredible, my brother. I know that you're a huge fan of The Cult. And
he and I have been friends for a long time.
He's the best. I feel like I like that song because that song to me is derivative of a Cult song. The guitar riff,
yes.
Honey, Are You Coming? But there's something to it that kind of borrows from the past, but it's modern.
Yeah.
I think Maneskin gets a lot of flack because people don't think they're like super authentic, but you know what? They write catchy songs. They write great songs.
And I don't think people should give them flack. I really love and enjoyed those guys. The first show I saw them do live in L.A., they were incredible. I mean, they just, it's such a great vibe going on, and I loved, when they did I Want to Be Your Slave, Want to Be Your Dog, back to back. Not even as a medley, but, like doing a little Iggy and the Stooges. But I think there's something really, again, there's something about his androgyny and just
and he's a star.
Vocal.
He's a star. No
he's
question.
Great. He's a total star. Plus, I think anybody that can modernize, I thought it was really cool that they did a more obscure Four Seasons song and make a hit out of it, Beggin', which was the fact that became a worldwide hit. I think people like to complain that they were a Eurovision band, but so were ABBA. And you can't hold anything against any of those bands. Again, it's not really how you get there. It's that you do if you're material and you're an authentic artist. You know what I mean? Because people have to take any opportunity they can to get seen and get heard.
No question.
And so Maneskin, I give or Monoskin. I think it's we can pronounce it any way you want. I think I've said Monoskin.
It's like Aaron Jones.
Yeah, Aaron. No, you know. So yeah, but I agree with you, man. I really like those guys, and I think there's a lot of great songs on the Rush album. Tom Morello is a guest on it. You can't go wrong.
Last but not least, it was a huge year for Nuno, Bettencourt, and the boys. Rise. I mean, the return of guitar here. I mean, there's a hole here, obviously, since Eddie passed, and everyone has been saying the last couple of years, is Nuno the next Eddie Van Halen? I mean, the solo alone in Rise is one of the greatest guitar solos probably in the last couple of years. So my hat goes off to making a great record. A lot of people, that kind of ended up a lot of people's like favorite hard rock record of the year. So yeah, again, just another great, strong record by Extreme. The Verse record, there's a lot of good stuff on there though too.
Yeah, I think Nuno's amazing on that record, and it's a heavier record.
It is.
There's a lot of stuff that's really heavy, and you know, Nuno said to me that he was. He said this is really one of Gary's records because Gary's singing his ass off, and Gary, of course, has a great voice, and they're both great. Nuno's just the guy's got endless energy, and he's super intelligent, and he's an incredible player. I love him. I mean, I think so. I'm really happy. I thought this record was really killer. When Rise came out, I was like, holy shit. Those guys are back. This is great. It was great to see in a big way.
Well, there's a lot of great music. We were even going to get into our top favorite movies and documentaries, but we can go on forever. But this is so fun. We got to do a part 2 of this.
Yeah, we do. We definitely do. You know, I mean,
because we plan like an hour, but the thing is, you and I can chat for 7 hours.
Yeah,
so
we do.
I'm not sure people will sit through the 7-hour podcast.
Yeah, I mean, it might bore people, or you might just take us on a long trip with you and hang out. You know, the great thing about that is my friendship has just become so important to me, and I love that we're just passionate music guys. We love it. I mean, you're a drummer. You know me. I've been doing radio for, if you count college radio, it's probably like 44 years. But I've been doing radio for and MTV for like 31. I'm so grateful that I get to talk about music with you and things we love.
Same,
and the passion. And you and I go out, and we should tell people, like, we'll go out to dinner, and all I got to say is, thank God my girlfriend is also a huge music fan, and your girlfriend is also a big fan, and we just, because, we would drive someone who wasn't
If you didn't like music, you can't sit with us.
You would not want to hang out with us. You would probably get really bored and just go like,
can these guys talk about food or something?
Yeah.
Anything else?
Yeah, and you're right. We didn't get into movies or music documentaries, but we can do that for another time, right?
Well, there'll be a part 2 for sure. I mean, I feel like this is going to be a regular thing for us anyway. So, but there was so much ground to cover, and you have so many great stories, so it's easy to get, you allot an hour, but this could easily be the 7-hour podcast with Matt and Scott.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I love it, Scott. We have so much, and again, I think the thing that people need to know and probably can tell from Scott's podcast is that we love so much music, and to me, that's the greatest gift in the world, man, is music. Like, there's nothing more important than the way a song makes you feel. Like, I get up in the morning and there's a song playing in my head, and I don't know what era it's from. I'll know what it is, of course, but it's just like the beauty of being alive is not only the people that you love, but the music that you love, and the music that you feel. The soundtrack, to me, that's everything. I'm so grateful every day that I found and fell in love with music, man, because I can't imagine life without it. I can't even imagine, who knows if I would even want to be around without music. But I'm very grateful to be alive, healthy, sober, like going on 4 years soon. And but man, music is the thing that's got me through every single thing. So I'm glad to be able to celebrate it and talk about it with you.
Yeah, and lastly, we should say 2024, big year for you. You got the Power Hour show, Access TV. You got your podcast.
It's on hiatus for a little while now, but it'll be back shortly. Also, I do this sober podcast called Sound Sobriety and Success, where I talk to people that have struggled like myself, who have gone through addiction or alcoholism issues, and how it's changed their lives. And, you don't have to define yourself by that. You can move on, and you can lead a good quality life. And I don't tell anybody how to live, because I certainly wouldn't let anybody tell me how to live when I was, drinking and going wild for so many years. But I will tell people there's another way, if they want to try it or check it out. There's definitely, and there's more than one way to get clean and sober. And then, I do a show for KLOS Sunday nights. It's called New and Approved. It streams on 955KLOS.com, which is, a new music countdown, 10 songs, albums, anniversaries, and rock birthdays and interviews. And I still do a show called Flashback. It's on 180 radio stations in America through Westwood One, and it's a classic rock history show.
You're a busy guy.
I keep busy, and I'm just grateful to be alive and be surrounded by music and friends like you, man. Every time we get together, it's the best time ever. We just have so much fun talking about.
Well, next time I think maybe we'll do this. We'll do this. We have to do this maybe before the end of the year next time. So we have a whole list coming up for 2024. So now we'll start to.
Might do a mid-year one.
Yeah, we could do a mid-year one. That's true. That's true. Matt, I love you, brother. Thank you for coming on. I
love
appreciate
you too, Scott. It's so great to be here with you.
Awesome.